Welcome to another Green Live. It's a great pleasure to have you here today. We are starting a new week with the episode 11. Believe it or not, we reached here. And as usual, I have my guests here with me. Welcome, Carlos, Adriana, and Stamatia. Very nice to have you here today.
Hello, thank you, Pedro.
Hi, Pedro.
Wonderful.
Hello, Pedro.
Hello. All right, so let's go for it. We have today a very interesting topic to talk about. We've been, talking about the crisis that is ahead of us, the potential catastrophes if we don't do any action. But how much is it really, and what is required from us? And that landed us in the topic of adaptation. And for us to start the session on adaptation today, I have this chart that helped me personally to understand exactly what is the issue ahead of us. And as you can see in front of you, this is the risk of catastrophic events with the increase of temperature. And what I like about this chart here, to be specific, is that you see very clearly that the rise of temperature for 1.5 degrees Celsius, 2 degrees Celsius, and beyond. What is the impact on food, natural environment, water, cities, infrastructure, and also the disaster risk management? And just for you to have an idea, in terms of food, which I believe is relatable to everyone listening to us right now, if we get to 1.5 degrees, which is the goal that we have over the next 10 years, or actually less than 10 years, we'll have a 60% decline in global average maize crop yield. If we go to the 2 degrees above, this is actually much more impactful. We have 7 to 10% loss of rangeland livestock globally. So I would like to bring to all of you this point that the people who did the least to cause the problem, they are the ones who will actually be at most risk. And with that, I would like to bring to all of you, and I would like to hear your own perspectives on that. So how you see this adaptation importance going forward, everybody?
So probably just to explain one thing before we go to answer that question, you have just shown a picture with different increase in global temperature. Just for everybody that is listening, you know that there's this IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. They do these scenarios. A scenario, what happens if the CO2 concentration or the CO2 equivalent concentration in the atmosphere gets to 450 or 470 parts. So they have different scenarios. This is what we call the RCPs, representative concentration pathway. So you have to choose which RCP you feel more comfortable with, and that RCP will tell you which of those scenarios that Pedro was talking about is going to be in front of us and when is going to be in front of us, because these RCP pathways are exactly that. Our pathways are telling us when those things are going to happen. Only that. For make it clear for everyone.
And Carlos, I'm very curious now. When you talk about pathways and what determine that pathway? So how do they calculate that?
Okay, so what determines that pathway is basically two things. We look at the past and we see how the CO2 equivalent concentration in the atmosphere is growing. For example, we look at the last 10 years and we know that it's growing 2 parts per million per year. So it's easy to extrapolate that if we don't do anything different, it will continue getting up 2 parts per million per year, okay? So in 10 years, we'll have then 20 parts per million in addition to what we have today, for example. And of course, we look at the past, but we also look at the future. Are we going to do something different? And depending on the activities that we do differently, then the path goes down, up, or stays like it is.
Wonderful. Stamatia, Adriana, you have any comments before we move?
Yeah, maybe just one comment to We always talk about climate mitigation, I think, and how we can fight it. And today we're going to talk about adaptation. So what is climate adaptation? Mainly it's how we can adapt and adjust what we do in order to, how can we say, mitigate the effects of climate change, which is already here, and also what we can do for the future. But I think, Stamatia, can you tell us maybe what is the difference between mitigation and adaptation? I know you are studying it a bit more deep.
Yes, of course. So as you mentioned, adaptation, it is the actions that we take so as to respond to climate impact and also to take advantage of the opportunities that rise. While mitigation is how we reduce the emissions, the greenhouse gas emissions. And I would like to give a simple example here so as to understand it better. Imagine that you are in a ship that because of a leak, it is sinking. So what the first thing that you will do is to grasp a basket and you just take the water out of the ship. So this is adaptation. And the second thing that you will do is to search for the leak. So what you will do, you will seal the leak so as no more water to come inside your boat. And this is the mitigation. So the important thing is to those two, mitigation and adaptation. So find the problem from the roots and also take action so as to get the water out of the boat. So take action so as to survive and stay afloat. So both are very important. And the sooner we take some actions on the mitigations on the mitigation part, the less we will have to do for the adaptation parts. So the sooner we take action so as to reduce the emissions and in a smarter way, we will have less effort for the adaptation. And
so I think it's now clear for everyone. Yeah. I think it's now clear for everyone, Stamatia, that we need to do both things at the same time. We cannot just think that everything's going to be solved with mitigation. We have a problem in front of us, so we need to start adapting now. In fact, there are many people that has studied that adaptation from a personal point of view, as we were able to see how many people were selling houses, for example, in Miami, close to the areas that we think are going to be under the water. That is adaptation. It's definitely not mitigation. But also in Miami, they are starting to build those barriers for the water. That's also adaptation. So not only companies but also individuals can do a lot to adapt. Correct?
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's
well,
true.
I think that brings us to a very interesting topic now, which is what is the size of the opportunity for adaptation? And I brought here some data for us to visualize, and maybe we can discuss a little bit and get your wisdom on that, right? Adaptation, number one, will require leadership on this climate resilience altogether. And according to data, we're talking about an investment in the next 10 years that will result in a net benefit of 7.1 trillion to the economy. And the best way to look at that is with the triple dividends of combining the avoided losses, the economic benefits, and also these social and environmental benefits. And if you look into investments in different areas to, get to that net benefit, we're talking about strengthening early warning systems, like what you just said right now, Carlos, in areas where, there's going to be an impact. We know that up front, making new infrastructure resilient is also part of your Miami illustration, improving dryland agriculture for crop production, finally protecting mangroves and making water resources management more resilient. So is it really an opportunity? We have a lot of business leaders watching us right now, and they want to understand, is this just a doomsday scenario, or we have anything that we can bring to our organizations here? Anybody want to make a comment?
Yeah, well, I think you already explained it a little bit. We have three opportunities there. First, to avoid losses. Second, to have economic benefits, and third, to bring additional social environmental benefits. So first, avoiding losses is very important. Yeah, so saving lives, saving losses of assets, like using early warning systems will really help to save lives, which has also social impact, and assets which are worth at least 10 times their cost. Yeah, so just imagine 24 hours warning of a coming storm or heat wave can cut the ensuing damage by 30%, which is not bad. So by just spending $800 million on such systems in developing countries would avoid losses of 3 up to 16 billion per year. Talking about infrastructure, which is I think is the second one you had on the slide, we can add like about 3% the upfront costs. So we make the building more resilient in the design phase. This would add 3% to its cost, but this would bring a benefit cost ratio of about 4:1, yeah, which is a lot. So it's really worth the pain. Talking about the economic benefits, just to make a simple example, what does it mean? Look at London's Canary Wharf, for example, and other developments in East London. This would have been impossible without the flood protection from the Thames barrier. And looking at the social environmental benefits, it's easy like it sounds. I mean, you just save lives, first of all, with early warning systems. Also, avoiding hunger saves lives. Also, avoiding heat waves saves lives. And the environmental benefits, it's all over the place, basically. Just think also about the mangrove forest, for example. We can, by saving the mangrove forest, you protect the people from the coastal flooding, but also the environment, the plants, the animals, the land that you use for agriculture, and so on. So this is the triple dividend that we can get out of the adaptation. And there is also an imperative behind it. Yeah, so there is the economic imperative, there's the human imperative behind that, of course, like I just explained it. Over to you, Pedro. You want to say something?
Yeah, I just have one question here for us to explore a little bit further about organizations that are using technology to tackle that opportunity. So maybe Carlos, Stamatia, would you make some comments of how technology can actually help organizations to adapt in this scenario?
Yep. Trying to convince companies to make green investments is only possible if they fully embrace the sustainable advantage concept. So the question that they are asking themselves, and many of our customers are asking themselves those questions, is, am I reaching new customers because I am adopting sustainable solutions? Am I launching new processes or creating new products that are green, are going to allow me to go to the fastest interest group in the history of humankind, which is the green consumer? So am I tackling this opportunity? And we're meeting customers that are telling us clearly three things. One, I will not get financed if I'm not sustainable. And this is thinking about their bottom line. Two, I will not be able to operate, to trade, to produce if I'm not sustainable. And this is the green line. And third, I will not get accepted by my consumer if I'm not sustainable. And this is the top line. So some of our customers know that looking for this sustainable angle is going to make them smarter, find new ways, save money, be cooler. And in a way, they know that now they have a piece of technology that can help them gathering all that data, smartifying the data, putting the data into the right process, combining financial and non-financial indicators like sustainability indicators, and making sure that helps them create that sustainability advantage.
To this, if I can, Carlos, I can add that actually the European Commission has put into place, together with the European Environmental Agency, a platform which is called ADAPT, to gather data and to understand better what are the consequences and what are the risks, because sometimes it's difficult to quantify it, to predict, and also to understand what's the benefit of it.
Interesting. ADAPT.
Very great. So I think that
another thing.
Yeah, go ahead, Stamatia, sorry.
And another thing that I wanted to mention before we change subject is that the companies should understand that there is a problem here, and they should not take actions because the government tells them to take actions. They should be proactive and take actions regardless of what the government wants from them.
That is
That's a good
extremely
point.
But you have
important.
to.
Those are the leaders. The leaders.
Well, I think this is absolutely true, but a great incentive for them is to actually have some sort of standard framework that they can work on. And that's something else that I brought here. We're talking about new standards. In every live, there is a new standard that we end up covering, right? And I have a new one for all of you today. We have here in front of us the TCFD, a lot of letters there, but this one specifically is the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosures. And as you see here, the number of members that are actually adopting these recommendations from the TCFD is actually growing exponentially. I want to understand from you, in your interactions with customers, how you see it. Do you see the customers actually having a compliance with those or not? So can you explain how these kind of standards are actually being in present of every organization's strategic plan now?
Yeah, I can start. For example, TCFD, as you mentioned, it's very, very important, especially now in the US, because it looks like it's going to be, let's say, compulsory starting 2025, but all over the place. So TCFD is one of those important regulations. Not only that regulation, also everything that has to do with the EU taxonomy, and this has in Europe different streams. For example, for the financial market players, they have to follow the Sustainability Financial Disclosure Regulation, what is called the SFDR. But there are other standards. We have GRI, which is widely accepted. Then we have customers that want also to report on ISO 14,000 for environment, 50,000 for energy. So that's I think where we can add a lot of value as SAP is, okay, how can I have a system that helps me gather information, data, and no matter which standard I have to comply with, I will be flexible enough to report on that, to create those scenarios, and more importantly, not only reporting, but to steer my company to look for opportunities mixing sustainability and financial reporting.
Yeah, and looking back to the standard right now, I would like to understand and unpack a little bit of how it works. Maybe, Stamatia, can you explain to us a bit more about the standard and how it works?
Yes, of course. It has 4 core elements, the standard. It is the first one is about the governance about the risk and opportunities. The second one is about the impacts of climate change into the business and strategy of the organization. The third one is about the risk management processes to identify and manage the risks, the climate-related risks. And the last one is metrics and targets to manage the climate-related risks and opportunities. It is somehow a foundation to improve the ability of the companies to assess and price the climate-related risks and opportunities. So just a few things
fantastic.
of TCFD.
I think it's a very comprehensive framework, and I understand that some companies are actually bringing that to their financial reports in order for them to demonstrate that they are compliant. Have you seen any of your customers bringing this to the financial report so far? Any of you?
Yes, we have large customers that are using the TCFD recommendations. In their non-financial reporting, they have some points that they are compulsory, but these are not compulsory. These are just some early adopters of TCFD. I have to say that many of them, even if they are doing good inroads, still gather all this information manually. They have a couple of people gathering information. They don't have the granularity, and they don't have the auditing capabilities to really go and dig deeper into where the data is coming from. And really, only when you have that granularity, only when you have that access to data, then you can start doing those scenarios that I was referring to. You can start steering your company. You can start looking for hidden opportunities within the data. So now some customers are doing following TCFD recommendations, but what we see is that they are doing that with a lot of manual effort and not embracing all the benefits that this kind of regulation can bring.
But just one question: is it even possible? I mean, if they don't have that data handy, how they do it?
Well, they do it in different things. First, let's imagine for a minute your suppliers. Okay, you need to have the carbon footprint of the products that you buy. Because you don't have that granular information, what you do is you just use industry standards. Is that good? Okay, it's better than nothing, but it's not good enough. The industry standard can be 100% or 300% away of the product that you're actually buying. Okay, there are many shortcuts, because we're all learning in this sustainability world of how to gather information that is ballpark correct, but it's just initially a step. So now what we work with our customers is, okay, where can I find information that is worth the effort? How can I embark my providers in providing information little by little, giving them enough time to adapt? We're talking about this today. It's also how suppliers need to adapt their reporting capabilities to provide information to their customers, and so forth and so on. So this is a journey. That's why building sustainable makes you resilience, but also you need resilience to make a sustainable approach. You're mute, Pedro.
So I have one case here that I would like your explanation to as well. Look at this one. We have a great partnership from SAP with EcoVadis that are bringing the sustainability ratings and scorecards from EcoVadis directly on the SAP Ariba supplier risk solution. Do you think this is a way for organizations at least to start having more visibility across their supply chain using data that helps them guide that kind of approach? So what's your view on using that approach with supply chain inside the SAP solutions?
This is a great example. What we do is through an API. If you're a user of Ariba, you can just extract all this information, and automatically, for many of your suppliers, you will have all this sustainability information. But it's not the only example of how you can, in a very easy way, extract information from your suppliers. Also with Qualtrics, we are delivering Qualtrics for suppliers, in which we ask suppliers what they are doing beyond whatever information they may have in systems like EcoVadis, what they are doing in terms of sustainability. And that information, you incorporate it in your data set to have something richer. Adriana, you were going to add something else.
Yeah, I think you already mentioned it. It's just the first step, and then we could look more into how we can understand the product carbon footprint, and not only how sustainable the supplier is.
Well, Adriana, I have another question for you. I know you've been doing a lot of work with traceability use cases, and I understand that SAP is making an investment on a startup within SAP, an entrepreneurship initiative called Green Token. Can you tell us about that Green Token and how that helps companies also to educate their consumers about the traceability and the origination of their products?
Sure, this is regarding mainly raw materials traceability for bulk materials, yeah, the ones that cannot come in batches, like we have seen plastic, metals, wood, liquids, and so on. It's very difficult to trace them, and you can imagine that these are also commingled. They go into different processes, chemicals, chemics. Processes and so on. I'm not an expert on that. So they get so many modifications that in the end, when you get your end product, even like your clothes, for example, you don't actually know what's in the product, or even in your phone. Yeah, you don't actually know what's in it. And it's difficult to recycle it. It's difficult to understand how sustainable it is, to calculate the carbon footprint. So if you would be able to have these green tokens, yeah, you whenever you have a piece of these raw materials, you can understand how many tokens, how many green tokens it has, and how it adds up in the value chain, and what's the sustainability at the end of the value chain, what's the end product made of, and how sustainable it is in just a few words. This applies to many industries, like we have seen.
Amazing. Wow, that's fantastic. We had really a nice tour around capabilities that can help on adaptation. So, what else you've got in store for us?
Well, we might also look a little bit on how some sectors are affected. Yeah, we talked a lot about investments and stuff like that, but let's look a little bit on how different sectors are affected. So even though, the European Union aims specifically at becoming net zero by 2050, this doesn't mean that the temperatures will not increase. They will increase anyway. And of course, this brings climate change and the need to adapt. And in the EU taxonomy, by the way, we have already categorized activities for adaptation, which might attract investments. But let's look now at some sectors and how they are affected. Let's just imagine this is really logic. I mean, if temperatures rise, you will get different aspects that will impact. First, let's say infrastructure and buildings. Yeah, so this is very pertinent to infrastructure and buildings, given their long lifespan and also their high initial cost, as well as their essential role in the functioning of our societies and our economies. So they can be very vulnerable to climate change because of their design. Yeah, they might be just designed to not resist to a storm, or they can be located in an area which is flood prone, or they are in a risk of avalanche and so on. So they can be damaged by these things. So we need to design the buildings and the infrastructures in a way that they are resilient. And this applies for cities. This applies for companies whenever they build new facilities, new premises for their operations. It's very important in order to be able to continue to operate. If you look at the energy systems, just think about the heat waves. Whenever temperatures are high, this means that you will need additional energy for the cooling system, and especially in the southern parts. I mean, whenever you get closer to the warmer countries, it means that you will need more cooling for the systems. But also, when you go to the northern parts, it means that you will need less, yeah, because you need less warming in the winter. So this creates, different balances, different peaks that the energy companies need to handle, and they need to predict that to be able to identify when they will come and address them, because we don't want to have outages of energy, and this will impact all our lives. But also look at agriculture, food. That's that's really important for all of us. Food and water. That's really important. Whenever the temperatures are rising, there are different problems in crop yields. Whenever you think about the location, but also the amount of the yield. Yeah, it's very important to be able to handle that, because the population is growing and the yields are getting very impacted by floods, by droughts. So the problem here is that water has a circular way of moving in nature, let's say, but there is no balance anymore. We either have droughts, we either have floods. Yeah, so this means that we need to handle both, and some crops means that they might need to move in the northern part of Europe, for example. But this also means that we need to handle hunger and poverty in the other countries, which will not have the opportunity anymore to produce these things. And this is also an opportunity for businesses, especially if we think of large organizations who operate globally. We have global supply chains that we don't want to disrupt them. So also going back to what you said, that the poverty, the poorer countries are more affected and are more at risk.
Yeah,
On this, we need to invest in that. Please.
in the way I would like to think about it is we have these scenarios that contemplate what you're describing, Adriana. So now imagine you in the company that you own, that you work for. What would you do different if you have an insight on what is going to happen in 10 years, on what is going to happen in 20 years? Take your own example and think about your company. What would have you been doing differently 20 years ago if you knew what you know today? And I think this is the opportunity that climate change also brings to us. Is okay, we have the scenarios in front of us. There are no scenarios that has been backed up by more scientists in the history of humanity. So we know exactly what is going to happen depending on the different pathways. Now, why with that information, we don't start acting today? Because we have those insights. And that is exactly, Pedro, you were asking, are our customers just taking, for example, the task force for climate-related disclosure information seriously to plan ahead? And I think that the response is some of them are planning ahead. Where can I put my if you're growing forests, those forests, how are you securing irrigation? How are you securing that the temperatures for your crops are going to affect depending on where you're planting, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that's exactly the case. How we can adapt having this inside information based on science as we have today.
Well, that's a big topic, and it's as if you have this amazing opportunity in front of you, and you can invest. Like you have a very interesting Amazon stock, and you have the great opportunity to invest it early, but you just leave it behind, right? And now you kind of regret. So do you think companies would look into the opportunity of reimagining their business models and the way to operate in the lights of sustainability as a missed opportunity in the future?
I think that they are, and some of them are already starting to look at it. Some of them, of course, are not, maybe, but they should start thinking about it. As I was saying, our supply chains are global, so we get our avocado, which we all like, and they're green even in colors, but they are good also for our health. We get it from South America, for example, also from countries which might have other issues. Yeah, so these companies also need to invest in those areas to make those facilities more climate resilient, to adapt it in order to ensure that we will have avocado tomorrow, just as a simple example. So we're just global. So
but here's the challenge. Here's the challenge for us. Look at this diagram here. If our customers and companies out there would be really becoming sustainable overnight, it means that they have to reimagine their supply chain management. And that means all the way from designing products that are more recyclable and environmentally sustainable, planning to reduce emissions and ethically source materials, also manufacture with minimal waste and environmental impact, and the delivery with the entire logistics that optimize loads to reduce, the carbon footprint, and finally the operation and working in a network. To be honest with you, very few organizations comes to mind that have all those best practices in place. And I understand that SAP, as a enabler of all those capabilities, it can offer those things, but sometimes companies are not at that stage yet. So do you think that the sustainability advantage that Carlos was telling in the beginning is the compelling reason for them to initiate those projects and integrate all those capabilities right now for this decade of action?
Well, it can be definitely an important reason for doing it. Apart for just looking at the pandemics that we are in right now, so that's also a good reason for making a resilient supply chain. So we have plenty of reasons to do it, I think. And companies
Yeah,
are starting
Yes,
to look
and
more and more at it, but each company is in a different stage and they're making progress. It will not happen tomorrow, of course, but maybe the day after tomorrow it will.
and the reasons that we have is that it builds our reputation, and also it attracts investors, more investors to invest into our company. So it's really, really important for the companies to go into that direction.
yeah. Now, our customers are asking us, give us a roadmap. We understand that this is too much to tackle, and the slide that you showed, Pedro, is just testament of that. I mean, it's so difficult to do all those things at the same time. And where is that information coming from? We're talking about information that they will most probably have in their ERP. If we're talking about finance, if we're talking about production, manufacturing, they will have that information in ERP. They will have other information in their sourcing systems, like Ariba, as we mentioned. They will have some other information in their travel and expenses, because Scope 3 emissions, this is important for Scope 3 emission, how your employees are traveling around, how they expend money, and that will come most probably from Concur, if they are intensive SAP users. And if they are not end-to-end, wall-to-wall SAP users, of course, they will have to grab this information from different sources. But in any case, what they have to understand is this is not about just, I'm going to comply with this regulation, full stop, let's move on, this will go. This will not go. As I said, this is the biggest interest group in the history of humankind. This is a green community, is skyrocketing, and they are going to need this information to make your company viable or non-viable in the next future. So the roadmap of how you're going to get there fast, it is very important to understand. Unmute, Pedro.
So if I am in my board meeting right now, Carlos, and I have to give them a compelling reason to start a supply chain initiative, or even the migration to the S/4HANA, the most advanced system that exists. So from the sustainability advantage, what would be my number one argument to convince my board right away? What would be your approach at the board meeting, Carlos?
I would say three things. If I cannot give you the number one, first is I will not get financed if I'm not sustainable. Very important to understand that now green finance is at the same level, and in some cases even cheaper than non-green finance. When I say green finance, is funding if you comply with certain sustainability criteria. So if you're in the board, you need to understand that money is going to be cheaper for you if you're green. Number two, you have to understand that you're going to access new customers and a fastest growing group if you're sustainable. So people that are going to buy your product only if you show your green shape. That's the second one. And the third one is that you will not be able to operate, to trade, if you don't comply with regulation. For example, if you're in the European Union, you have to comply with regulation. But if you're not in the European Union and you want to trade with the European Union, you also have to comply with the European Union rules. So you want money, you want to operate, and you want to go to new customers, you need to have a sustainability roadmap.
Wow. I think that's a very good reason to move the board and prioritize initiatives today. And thank you very much, Carlos, for saying that. What else do we have to cover, everybody? I have a couple of ideas here that I want to share with everybody, especially the upcoming SAP Sustainability Summit. I want to give more details to the people listening to us and give them an invitation for the Sustainability Summit. But before we get there, anything else we have to cover about adaptation?
Yes, I would like to mention something else. Do you think that consumers, people, citizens are ready for the net zero 2030 world? And what I mean about that, what the world would like in 2030, let's say, in the terms of mobility, we will have electric cars, okay? And people will use public transportation and bike and go by walk. In terms of the diet, they will not eat meat or fish, and they will eat only vegetables and fruits. In terms of consumption, they will reuse goods and also recycle a lot of things. And in terms of infrastructure, let's say, we will use only renewable energy and no concrete into the buildings. So this is some things of how the world would look like. Do you think that the consumers, us people, are ready for that kind of world?
Well, I can speak from data, right? I live in Dubai, and there was a very recent study that demonstrates that the UAE residents, in general, they are ready to commit to sustainability, right? So there is a huge compelling reason in this part of the world for the citizens to actually embrace sustainability. And I understand also, Stamatia, with the survey, the research we have conducted from SAP in the markets of Spain and also Italy. We learned a lot. Maybe you can share some of that to us.
Yes, we learned a lot that people want want more awareness from the different companies, either from the utilities companies or for the car manufacturers. They need to learn more about what is sustainable, what means the environmental impact for them. They want to be part of a community. A lot of people are saying that they want to be part of a community with that follows sustainable practices, and they are not fully convinced of the sustainable practices that the different brands are taking at the moment. So it seems from our survey that consumers are not so much convinced, and they are not aware of the issues and the damages. But so that's why the questions, if they are not convinced, are they ready for the changes for the 230 new world?
Well, then
And
I
when
think
they will be ready?
there is a difference then between being ready and commit to the overall topic and the understanding and the really knowledge about it, right? So I think maybe there is a disconnect. So I have a feeling inside of me that I need to do something and the world needs to change, but I don't know exactly what to do. I think if you look at the consumers, that probably is a reality. But something that I'm more close to is the business community. And I can tell you, the business community don't have a clue, right? For them, they feel like there is something big coming, regulations and everything that we discuss every week here, but have no clue how to adapt themselves. Imagine citizens and normal consumers. Is that something that you also feel?
You know, why is it so difficult? I mean, climate change science is difficult, but there are three questions that are very, very difficult for all of us to understand. First is who needs to solve the problem? Because climate change is a challenge that nobody can solve single-handedly. So I need to make the investment, and everybody will reap the benefits. No matter if you're a company or a country, this is the opposite of what we all love. What we like is others making the investments and us reaping the benefits. So who is going to make that investment? Second is when. So we need the investments to mitigate climate change today. We don't know when the results will come. So neither the problem nor the solution are clearly defined. Yes, you can choose your own IPCC scenario, but this makes a bad case for an investment. So try to convince your banker that your next investment is due in a month, but you cannot be sure about when you will get the returns. So when do we have to do the investments is not clear. And And the most important question, it is an answer for many people and for many companies, is what? If climate change is invisible, it is in the air, it is under the ground, it is in the sea, but you cannot see it. So you have to believe that wars and natural disasters, that polar ice melting is caused by something that you cannot see, even if 1,000 scientific people is telling you so. So your next investment is going to be visible. You will see deducted in your bank account. But the problem that you will be contributing to help will continue to be invisible. So answering these three questions is a real problem of climate change. Who's going to solve it? When are we going to solve it? And what is what we're trying to solve? If you have clarity on those three things, it's much easier. If you don't, then you wait for regulations to come.
Well, you're making me more motivated than ever to run this weekly conversation, because I believe that we are making a contribution by bringing those thoughts, insights, and helping the business community that are following us to reflect and also see what kind of things that they can do themselves. Well, before I talk to the SAP Sustainability Summit, I want to take something out of the way. Things are getting very nice here, right? So we are doing a very good job every week. So we need to take it to the next level. So what is the most confused topic in the sustainability world that we can tackle next week? What would be your recommendation for something super difficult that our audience would really feel glad to participate and learn from this live streaming?
I think the standards are killing us all. So many, and there are new ones are appearing, new regulation is coming. It's difficult to understand which one to apply, why. Whenever you have a new stakeholder asking for a new reporting or a new standard, how do you handle that? What do they cover? So on.
Agree.
Yeah.
All right.
Good
So
idea.
we will be talking then next week about all the differences between the standards. What are the good ones? What are the ones that are not well developed? What are the ones that are being accepted? What is the first? What is the latest? That sounds very, very, very exciting. Let's do this. Now, everybody, let me just talk to you about the SAP Sustainability Summit. We have something very good that will help you really deep dive on all these topics that we are having here. As a matter of fact, the Sustainability Summit from SAP is going to be for free for everybody to participate. I'm going to run a video here, but I just want you to put on your agenda on the 28th and the 29th of April. This is going to be a very important opportunity for you, especially if you have any kind of SAP systems in your organization and you want to understand how those systems can help you become more sustainable and get those sustainability advantages. It's a very, very well curated agenda of 2 days that we're going to address everything that you need to know in order to take action right now. And just everybody, what is your expectation for the Sustainability Summit? Maybe each one of you could give us your personal feeling about the summit.
Yeah, I just want to say that we are also expecting internally that summit, because there are going to be some extra announcements made during these 2 days. So I'm eager to listen to the contents. If you're an SAP users, you need to be there to really understand how you can tackle your systems, as Pedro mentioned.
Yes, I'm also waiting to hear the new things that will come in the Sustainability Summit. A lot of announcements. There will be a lot of announcements for the climate part and also for the circular economy part.
Great, and I'm also looking forward to see the speakers. I know we'll have like really great speakers.
Well, I'm opening here the website where everybody can make the registration. As you can see, super simple. You have a 19 days window to come and register yourself on the April 28 and 29. That will be a virtual live experience over the next 2 days. And here, you need to click register now. And by clicking this button, you will have a very simple form that you have to register to be part of it. And you will immediately join this event that will probably give you way more ideas on how to create your sustainability advantage. And with that, I will leave you.
For every person participating, I think we're going to be planting and keeping 1 square meter of forest.
Wonderful. Another
Wow.
great thing,
Great.
Carlos. Can you tell us more about that?
Well, I would have to dig into the details, but I saw that for every person registered, that's what SAP is going to do.
Wow. So if you are right now listening to this, you gotta register yourself. If not for, growing your sustainability advantage, but for the planet. So hit that registration button, and I think you'll do great job for your organization and also for the company. And now see this video, and I will end here. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you, Carlos, Stamatia, and Adriana. Always very insightful to have this time with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pedro.
Thank you, Pedro.